A throne chamber carved from crystal, twin suns burning behind tall windows. 200 nobles stand in absolute silence, and not one of them dares to move. She stands alone at the wall. The High Empress, indigo skin, obsidian hair falling past her waist. She has not spoken in 11 days. The bioluminescent markings along her temples have not pulsed since the last star fell. Something inside her is dying, or something is finally waking up. Even her oldest advisors cannot tell which. The great doors crack open at the far end of the chamber. Footsteps, the drag of chains across marble. They bring a man in, blood on his face, his uniform in tatters, a maintenance technician from a captured ship, 43 years old, the lowest name on the prisoner roster. He stops 3 paces from her throne. He does not kneel. She turns from the window. She opens her mouth. Part 1. The garden terrace breathed in twin moonlight. Crystal forests pulse below them in slow, ancient rhythms, patterns older than language, older than grief. She sat beside him close enough to feel his warmth through the fabric of her ceremonial robes. Her hand rested on the small wooden table between them. His hand covered hers. Neither of them spoke for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was barely a whisper. I would rather have 60 years of feeling alive than 600 more of merely existing. He turned his face toward hers. The lines around his eyes deepened, not with pain, with something he had forgotten how to name. She leaned forward, pressed her lips to his forehead. The moons rose higher. The pulse of the forest answered her bioluminescent markings in a slow, soft song. Cut to black. 5 weeks earlier, an empress who had not spoken in 11 days summoned a prisoner of war. The High Empress Valanthra of the sovereign dominion had not spoken in 11 days. Her advisors had grown used to the silence. They had grown used to the way she stood at the crystalline walls of her throne chamber, staring through them, searching for something in the void between stars. She did not look at her food when it was brought. She did not acknowledge the victory celebrations prepared in her honor. She did not sleep. She stood. She walked. She watched. For 11 days, on the morning of the 12th, she opened her mouth. Bring me the human. The chamber stilled. Lord Cassar, first voice of the Imperial Council, stepped forward, his silver robes catching the light of the twin suns through the high palace windows, his silver hair falling over his shoulders in the formal braid of the highest noble houses. He had stood beside her since before her father died. He knew her silences. He thought he knew them. Your radiance. His voice was careful, measured, the voice of a man who had spent decades learning when not to speak. The human prisoner is of no consequence, a maintenance engineer from the captured vessel. Surely you wish to address the captured officers, the ones with intelligence value. She did not look at him. I said, bring me the human. The command moved through the chamber like a current, silencing the murmurs of the assembled nobility, stilling the breath of every aide and adjutant present. Lord Cassar bowed. At once. She did not watch him leave. She watched the void, her ceremonial markings, the bioluminescent lines along her temples that betrayed velatory emotion. To those trained to read them pulsed once, faintly, then stilled. She was nearly 7 feet tall. The weight of long centuries pressed visibly on her shoulders. Her obsidian hair fell to her waist in a thick braid threaded with silver. Her skin was indigo, deep as the ocean before dawn. Her eyes were amethyst, vertical pupils rimmed in gold. She had ruled the sovereign dominion since before your grandparents were born. For most of that time, she had not laughed. She had been bonded once, a long time ago, Lord Vorinth. They were married at her ascension. He died in the 3rd year of the Katari War. Valanthra was 40 years old. He was the only person she had ever loved. After he died, she had walked to the cliff above the imperial gardens 3 times. Twice her father pulled her back. The 3rd time she pulled herself back and stopped feeling anything at all. That had been a long time ago. She watched the void between stars and waited. They brought him in chains. Holden Reeve had seen better days. The battle for the research station had not been kind to him. A deep gash above his left eye had crusted over with dried blood. His maintenance uniform hung in tatters across his frame. His left sleeve was missing entirely. He was not a large man. He was 43 years old. Dark hair gone gray at the temples, gray eyes set deep beneath heavy brows, a face that had been weathered by 20 years of working in the cramped maintenance spaces of starships. His hands were callous, scarred, the hands of someone who had spent a lifetime fixing things instead of breaking them. He walked into the throne chamber between 2 palace guards. He did not look at the assembled lords. He did not look at the crystalline ceiling. He looked at her. He did not kneel. The gasps from the assembled court were immediate. Lord Kassar's hand went to the ceremonial blade at his hip. A younger lord half rose from his seat. "Insolent creature," Kassar hissed. "You stand before the High Empress of the Sovereign Dominion. You will show proper—" "It's all right." The Empress raised one hand. The chamber fell silent. She descended the steps of her throne with a slowness that revealed nothing, her ceremonial robes trailing across the polished floor, the bioluminescent markings on her temples beginning very faintly to pulse. She stopped 3 paces from him, studied him. He looked back at her. That alone drew scandalized whispers from the court. Among the Velathari, direct eye contact with the Empress was a privilege reserved for bonded mates and blood kin. Holden Reeve did not know that. Or perhaps he did and did not care. "You are the one who sealed the breach," she said. It was not a question. Someone had to. Your boarding party's explosives cracked the hull in 3 places. Another minute and the civilian section would have vented to vacuum. "That's what I heard. You saved 342 lives." He did not answer. 86 of them were children. He looked down then. For the first time, his jaw tightened. "I did my job." "Your job." The Empress circled him slowly, her robes whispering against the polished floor, the court watching her every movement like a held breath. "Your commanding officers attempted to flee in the escape pods. Your security forces surrendered within the first hour, and yet you, a maintenance technician, crawled through burning wreckage to seal a breach that our own soldiers had caused." She stopped in front of him, close enough now that he could see the fractured patterns of gold in her violet eyes. "Why?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough, worn down, a voice that had not been used much in a long time. "Because the kids were screaming." He looked up at her. "And no one else was coming." Something quiet moved through her then. It was subtle, a loosening of the rigid set of her jaw, a faint softening around the eyes. The assembled lords would not have noticed, but Holden Reeve had spent 20 years reading the micro-expressions of malfunctioning machinery. He had spent 2 decades watching for the small signs that meant something was about to break. He recognized the look. He recognized her. "You lost someone," she said, quietly, almost gently. It was not a question either. "A child." The chains rattled as Holden's hands tightened into fists. He did not look away from her. "My daughter." A breath. Her name was Emma. Another. She was 8. He stopped, jaw working. Hull breach on a colony transport. 6 years ago. The emergency seals failed, and He stopped again. The words would not come. He had not said her name out loud in 3 years. He had not said the full sentence, I couldn't reach her in time, out loud since the morning of her funeral. The Empress watched his face. Something in her own face moved. You speak of her as if you saw her yesterday. I see her every day. The court held its breath. He continued, quietly, I lost her mother first, 14 years ago. She died bringing Emma into the world. So for 9 years it was just the two of us, and then the seals failed, and He stopped, swallowed. I couldn't get to her in time. By the time I cut through the bulkhead, she was... He did not finish. He did not need to. The Empress closed her eyes for just one moment. When she opened them again, something in their depth had changed, not softened, steadied, as if she had found something she had been searching for in the void between stars. She had been searching for it for a long time. Name your reward, human. The words cut through the chamber like a blade. Every eye turned to her. The shock rippled through the assembled nobility in a wave that broke against the crystalline walls. The Velithari oath of recompense was ancient, sacred, a debt that could not be refused once invoked. It had not been spoken by an empress in over 2,000 years. Holden blinked. What? You saved lives that my forces endangered. By the old laws, by the codes that bound my ancestors before the first ships left our home world. I owe you a debt. She did not blink. Name your reward, human. Land. Lord Cassar choked. He could not stop himself. Wealth, freedom. The Empress did not look at him. She looked at Holden. Anything within my power to grant. The lords erupted. Lord Cassar stepped forward. His silver face flushed beneath the controlled exterior. His hands trembled in a way that he had not let them tremble for as long as anyone could remember. Your radiance. You cannot be serious. He is a prisoner of war, a member of an inferior species. The oath of recompense was intended for those who demonstrate honor beyond expectation. She did not raise her voice, but the temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. That is what the law says, Lord Cassar, or have you forgotten your studies? He did not answer. He could not. Holden looked at her, really looked, past the ceremonial markings, past the imperial bearing, past the cold mask she wore like armor. He saw the exhaustion in the set of her shoulders. He saw the loneliness in the way she stood apart from her own court. He saw the resignation of someone who had stopped expecting anything good from the universe. He recognized it because he saw it in the mirror every morning. Dinner, he said. The word fell into the silence like a stone into still water. Lord Cassar's mouth opened, closed, opened again. What? Dinner with you? Holden held her eyes. Just dinner. The chamber froze. Somewhere quiet. No advisors, no ceremonies, just two people sharing a meal. The Empress stared at him. The Lord stared at him. The entire court stood paralyzed, uncertain whether they had witnessed madness, or an insult, or something else entirely. You could have asked for your freedom, she said finally, for your ship, for enough wealth to live comfortably for the rest of your natural life. I could have. Why didn't you? He looked at her for a long time before he answered. Because I've been alone for 6 years. A pause. And you look like you've been alone for a lot longer than that. For the first time in 11 days, the Empress smiled. It was a small thing, barely a quirk at the corner of her mouth, but it transformed her face in a way that made the younger lords catch their breath. The bioluminescent markings on her temples pulsed once, twice. settled into a slow, steady rhythm that none of them had seen in living memory. "Tomorrow evening," she said, "the garden terrace. I will have my servants prepare something simple. Simple sounds good. I'm not much for fancy," she nodded, as the guards led him away, chains removed on a quiet gesture from her Lord Cassar moved to her side. "Your radiance." He did not bow this time. He did not lower his voice. The careful 300 years cracked open, just a hair. "This is unprecedented. The council will object. The noble houses will see this as let them." She watched the humans retreating back, something unreadable in her ancient eyes. "He asked for nothing of value, Lord Cassar. No power, no advantage, just the pleasure of my company." She turned back to her throne, her voice soft. "When was the last time anyone wanted only that?" Lord Cassar had no answer. She did not look at him as she ascended the steps. She did not look at him as she sat. She did not look at him for the rest of the day. He watched her not look at him, and something old and bitter began to twist in his chest. They put Holden in a small room in the visitors' quarters of the palace, not the prisoner barracks, not the punishment wing. The room had a window, a real window, made of something that was not glass. He could see the crystal forest below. There was a bed, a washing basin, a change of clothes laid out on a chair. The clothes were simple, gray tunic, gray trousers. The fabric was softer than anything he had touched in 20 years. He stood at the window for a long time. He thought about Emma. He always thought about Emma, because she would have loved this. The crystal forests, the strange light, the bioluminescent patterns. She had loved everything, the way only an 8-year-old can love everything. She would have asked 1,000 questions. She would have asked why the trees glow. She would have asked if the Empress was nice. He did not know how to answer that one, not yet. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked at his hands. They were still shaking, just a little, not from fear, from something he had not felt in 6 years. He did not know the word for it. He thought it might be hope. He flinched at the thought. Hope had a way of killing him slowly. He laid down on the strange bed, in the strange room, on the strange world, and for the first time since the seals had failed on the colony transport, he slept. The garden terrace overlooked the crystal forest of Velith Prime. The bioluminescent trees pulsed in patterns that had been old when the first Velithari learned to write. Some of them were older than the Empress herself. Some of them were older than the sovereign dominion. The table on the terrace was small, deliberately small, set for 2, roasted root vegetables from the imperial greenhouses, a clear broth that steamed gently in the cool evening air, bread that had been baked that afternoon. Nothing ornate, nothing ceremonial. The Empress sat at the table alone. She had dismissed her servants an hour ago. She had dismissed her guards a half-hour ago. She had dismissed her own racing thoughts approximately 15 minutes ago, with less success. The bioluminescent markings on her temples pulsed in slow, uneven patterns. She had not eaten across a table from another being in longer than she cared to count. She had not been alone with a man, any man, in 50 years. She had not wanted to be. Until now, she did not know what she wanted now. She heard his footsteps on the stone path. She did not turn. She did not need to. She felt him arrive, felt the change in the air, felt the way her own body went very still. She had ruled an empire for longer than human civilization had been spacefaring, and she had forgotten how to greet a guest. "You're staring," she said. The footsteps stopped. "Sorry." He moved into her field of vision then, settling into the chair across from her with the careful movements of a man who was acutely aware he was out of his depth. It's just I've worked on starships for 20 years. He looked out at the crystal forest, seen a lot of worlds through viewports and maintenance hatches, but this is different. Different how? It's real. He looked at her then. She was struck again by the directness of his gaze. Among her people, such openness was considered crude, unseemly. Among humans, it seemed to be simply the way they were, not just something I'm passing through on my way to somewhere else. She gestured at the food. Please, eat. He did not move yet. I should warn you, I have no idea if any of this is compatible with human biology. My physicians assured me nothing would be toxic, but the flavor may be unusual. He picked up a piece of the bread, tore off a small piece, ate it. His eyebrows rose. That's good, like sourdough, but sweeter. You seem surprised. Honestly, I expected it to taste like engine coolant. He shrugged. Every alien food I've ever tried has tasted like engine coolant. A laugh escaped her. It was short, startled, quickly suppressed, but genuine. She had not made that sound in a very long time. Perhaps other species simply have inferior culinary traditions. Or maybe my palate's been ruined by 20 years of ship rations. He sampled the broth, then the vegetables, taking his time with each. This is good. Thank you. For the food, I mean, and the company. She did not know what to say to that. She had not been thanked for her company in a long time. She had been thanked for her judgments, for her favor, for her interventions, for her gold and her decrees and her armies, but not for her company. She let him eat. She watched the crystal forest pulse below them in slow, even patterns. She let the silence sit between them, comfortable, unrushed. She had forgotten what a comfortable silence felt like. Most silences in her life were not comfortable. Most silences were the silence of a court waiting for her to speak, of an aide waiting for her decision, of a soldier waiting for her command. This silence wanted nothing from her. It just sat with her. She drank from her cup. She set it down. She looked at him. Why did you really ask for this? She said. He set down his utensil. He did not look away. Because when I looked at you in that throne room, I didn't see an empress. A breath. I saw someone who looked exactly the way I felt after Emma died, surrounded by people, completely alone. She was quiet for a long moment. You presume a great deal. Maybe. His voice was gentle, not pushing. Am I wrong? Her hands tightened around her cup. She did not look at him. She looked out at the moons. I have ruled for longer than your grandparents have been alive. A breath. My bondmate died in the first year of the Qatari War. I have outlived 2 children, 3 grandchildren, more friends than I can count. She paused. Everyone I speak to wants something from me. Power, favor, access. Even my own advisors see me as a means to their ends. And what about you? She turned her head then, looked at him. What do you want? The question hung between them. I don't know anymore, she admitted. I haven't known for a very long time. He nodded slowly, as if he understood. He did understand. After Emma, he said, I threw myself into work. 70, 80-hour weeks. I volunteered for every dangerous assignment I could find. I told myself it was because the work needed doing. But really, he looked down at his hands. Really, I think I was hoping something would kill me, so I wouldn't have to do it myself. She drew a breath she could not quite finish. That is a remarkably honest admission. No point in being dishonest. We're having dinner. You asked. Most beings would not share such vulnerability with a stranger. You're not a stranger. He met her eyes again. You're someone who understands what it feels like to carry a weight so heavy you can barely stand. That makes you the opposite of a stranger. In my book. She studied him with new eyes. Your species is not what I expected. What did you expect? Aggression, posturing, demands and threats, even from a position of weakness. That is how the other species we have encountered have behaved. She tilted her head, a movement that was oddly bird-like. Instead, I find a man who saves children and asks for dinner, who speaks of his own pain as if it were simply a fact, not a weapon, not a shield. Maybe that's just me, he shrugged. I'm not exactly a representative sample. Perhaps not. She stood, moved to the edge of the terrace. After a moment, he joined her. They stood side by side, looking out at the alien forest. The distance between them, the precise width of propriety. The twin moons hung lower now, closer to the horizon, painting the crystal forest in shades of silver and pale blue. She did not look at him when she spoke. I received 14 formal protests today from various noble houses. They object to my invocation of the oath. They object to my unseemly familiarity with a human prisoner. Should I apologize? No. A faint smile touched her lips. It was the most interesting thing that has happened to me in 30 years. She paused. I found myself looking forward to this evening. Holden Reeve, that is, entirely not something I am accustomed to. Holden is fine. He glanced at her sideways. My friends call me Holden. Are we friends? Then. He considered the question seriously. I think we could be, if you wanted to be. The moons climbed higher. In their light, her indigo skin took on an almost ethereal quality. The bioluminescent markings along her temples pulsed in slow, even patterns that he did not understand. Among my people, she said softly, those patterns indicate emotional state. They are difficult to control, which is why we train from childhood to suppress them. What do they mean right now? She did not answer for a long time. They are displaying something I have not felt in a very long time. What's that? She turned her face toward him. Hope. He looked at her. He did not look away. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she turned back toward the table. Stay, she said. For dessert, if nothing else, my cook makes an excellent arrangement of seasonal fruits. He smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes, the first one he had given anyone in 3 years. I'd like that. She did not retire to her chambers when the dinner ended. She walked through the moonlit corridors of the palace, past the sleeping aides, past the station palace guards who pretended very carefully not to notice that their Empress was walking alone at the 3rd hour of the night. She walked for a long time. She did not know where she was going until she did. The Imperial Archives. She had not visited the archives in 80 years. She pushed open the great doors. The lights came up in slow, even waves, reading the temperature of her skin, adjusting to her preference. The old systems remembered her. She stood in the central rotunda. Lady Thessalon stood at the central reading table. Lady Thessalon was 400 years old. She was tall and thin, her skin a deep jade green, her hair long and white, pulled into a high knot fastened with a single bronze pin. Her eyes were the color of deep cobalt, patient as old water. She had served Valanthra's father. She had served Valanthra's grandfather. She had served the Empire for nearly 3 centuries. She looked up from her text as the Empress entered. She did not bow. She had not bowed to Vaillanthra since the day Vaillanthra's mother had died, and a 15-year-old princess had wept into Lady Thessalin's shoulder for an entire night. Your radiance. The voice was warm, worn, the voice of someone who had loved her for a very long time. Thessalin. The Empress did not move from the doorway. Lady Thessalin set down her stylus. You walked here alone, at this hour. I did. You are smiling. The Empress raised a hand to her own mouth. She had not realized. She lowered her hand. I had dinner with the human. I know. The entire court is in an uproar. I know that too. The old archivist studied her for a long time. Then she stood, slowly, her ancient joints protesting, and walked to the Empress. She did not take her hand. She did not embrace her. She had not done either since Vaillanthra was a girl, but she stood very close and spoke very softly. Be careful, my child. Of him, of yourself. The Empress did not answer. Lady Thessalin's cobalt eyes held hers. I have served you since you were a child. I have watched you bury your father, your bondmate, your sons, your grandchildren. I have watched you build a wall around your own heart so thick that for the longest time no one, not even me, could find a way in. Thessalin, let me finish, please. The Empress closed her mouth. After Vorinth died, you stopped feeling. I watched you stop. I served beside you every day. I watched you decide that loving anyone again would kill you. The Empress did not speak. Her bioluminescent markings pulsed once, painfully. Tonight I watched a human make you laugh. Lady Thessalin paused. I have not seen you laugh in a very long time, and I am very glad, and I am very afraid. Afraid of what? Of what happens if you let yourself feel and then lose him. The Empress was silent for a very long time. When she spoke, her voice was steady. He is going to die. I know that. He is human. He will live 60 more years if he is fortunate. I am Velithari. I will live 300 more if I am not careful. Yes, and I want to feel him, a breath, even knowing that. I want it. Lady Thessalin closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. Then be careful what you do with that, my child. The Empress nodded once. She turned to go. At the doorway she paused. Thessalin. Yes, he is not what they think. I know. He has lost as much as I have, perhaps more. I know that too. The Empress did not turn back. Speak to him. When the moment is right, he should hear about me from someone other than me. I will, when he is ready, if he comes back. He will come back. Your radiance. The Empress did not ask how she knew. She left the archives. She walked back through the moonlit corridors of the palace, alone. For the first time in a very long time, she did not feel alone. The next morning, Holden woke to find his small room had been changed. Not the room itself. The chair where his old uniform had hung was gone. In its place stood a small writing desk, with paper, with ink, with a stack of books in the corner. The books were in Common Standard, Histories of the Sovereign Dominion, a children's primer on Vailithari biology, a volume of court poetry, a treatise on the oath of recompense. A small note sat on the top of the stack for the man who was curious enough to ask why the trees glow. It was not signed. He sat on the bed for a long time. He did not pick up the books. He looked at them. He looked at the note. He thought about Emma. He thought about the woman who had sent these books to him. He thought about the way her bioluminescent markings had pulsed in the moonlight, about the way she had said hope as if she had forgotten how to use the word. His chest hurt, in a way it had not hurt in 6 years. It hurt to be cared for. It hurt to be considered. He had forgotten how that felt. He picked up the primer. He opened to the first page. He began to read. That evening, as he was walking back to his quarters after the second dinner, they had spoken of stars this time, of engines, of the strange way human children laugh. Lord Cassar was waiting for him. He stood at the end of the corridor, in his full ceremonial robes, his silver hair loose now, his ceremonial blade visible at his hip. He had been waiting a long time. Holden stopped. The two men looked at each other. Neither spoke for a moment. "You are a small man." Lord Cassar's voice was quiet, almost conversational. "In a borrowed coat." Holden did not answer. "I have served the Empress for longer than your entire species has been spacefaring. I have watched her bury her bondmate. I have watched her bury her children. I have stood beside her for every loss, every betrayal, every long quiet decade." He took a step closer. "And you walk into her throne room covered in blood. You ask for dinner." "I did." "And you think you understand her." "I don't." The answer caught Cassar off guard. He paused. "I don't understand her at all," Holden said, his voice level. "I just sat across from her at a table and ate a piece of bread and listened. That's all. That is more than anyone has done in a very long time. Then I'm sorry no one else thought to try." Lord Cassar's hand tightened on the hilt of his ceremonial blade, not enough to draw, just enough that the leather creaked. "Enjoy your dinners. Human. They will be short." He turned then, his robes flaring in the dim corridor light. He walked away. He did not look back. Holden stood alone in the corridor for a long time. He felt the weight of a stare from somewhere he could not see, the hum of palace surveillance crystals along the ceiling, the slow, ancient breathing of a building that had stood for 1,500 years and had watched many smaller men disappear. He did not move. He thought about Emma. He thought about the woman who had served him bread the night before. He thought about the soft pulse of the bioluminescent markings on her temples when she had said the word hope. He took a breath, and he walked back to his room. He did not lock the door behind him. There was no point. If they were going to come for him, a lock would not stop them. He sat on the bed. He opened the children's primer. He read until the moons rose, and somewhere in the palace, a man who had loved an empress for the longest time began to plan. Part 2, 3 weeks. That was how long it took. For Holden Reeve to stop sleeping with one eye open, for the palace guards outside his door to stop watching him as if he were something dangerous, for the cooks in the kitchens to begin sending him small things they thought a human might like, a soft cheese that tasted almost like cheddar, a sweet root that tasted almost like apple, a clear tea that tasted like absolutely nothing he could name and which he drank every morning anyway. 3 weeks, 11 dinners. He counted them. He did not know why he counted them, except that he had not counted anything in 6 years except the days since Emma had died, and now there was something else worth counting. 11. The first one had been roasted root vegetables and broth. The second one had been a kind of stew with grain he did not recognize, and the Empress laughing, actually laughing, when he asked if it was made from something that used to walk around. The third one had been the night they argued about engines. He had said the Velithari fusion drives were inefficient. She had said human chemical rockets were a child's toy. He had said her warships used 3 times the fuel necessary for the thrust they generated. She had said he was a maintenance technician who had never seen the inside of an imperial bridge. He had said he had seen plenty of imperial bridges, 6 of them, from the maintenance tunnels behind the engine cores while he was fixing the warships her people had captured and then abandoned because they could not figure out how the cooling systems worked. She had gone very quiet. He had thought he had finally crossed a line. Then she had laughed again, harder this time. She had said, "Fine, show me, tomorrow, the Imperial flagship. You will explain to my chief engineer everything we do wrong." He had said, "That sounds like a terrible idea." She had said, "It is. Bring your wrench." And he had. And he had spent 6 hours the next day in the engine bay of the Imperial flagship with 3 Velithari engineers who hated him and 1 chief engineer who tolerated him. And by the end of the day, the chief engineer had stopped tolerating him and started listening to him. And by the end of the second day, the chief engineer had asked him if he would consider staying on as a consultant. And by the end of the third day, Holden had been formally reclassified, cultural liaison, not prisoner. He had not asked for the change. It had simply happened, the way many things had begun to simply happen. His quarters had been moved, not to luxury accommodations, to a small set of rooms in the outer ring of the palace, a bedroom, a sitting room, a small terrace of his own that overlooked a corner of the Crystal Gardens. The terrace had a chair on it. The chair was small and worn. It looked like it had been pulled from storage. He sat in it every morning. He drank the tea that tasted like nothing. He watched the crystal trees pulse in patterns. He was beginning slowly to understand. On the morning of the 12th day, Lady Thessalon came to see him. She arrived without announcement, without an escort, without any of the formal protocols that Holden had begun to expect from visitors in the Imperial Palace. She simply opened his door, looked at him, and said, "You are reading the children's primer." "I am." "You have finished it." "I have, twice." "And the history?" "Most of it." "And the poetry?" He hesitated. "I'm working through it." Slowly, she walked into his sitting room, without invitation, the way only someone who has been alive for 400 years can walk into another person's room. She sat down in the chair across from his, folded her hands in her lap, waited. He did not know what to do. He sat down across from her. She studied him for a long time. "You ask interesting questions." Holden Reeve. "I'm sorry, we haven't met." "We have not. Formally." "Then how do you know I ask interesting questions?" "Because every book in your room has notes in the margins. In Common Standard, the librarian who brought them to you reports to me. He reads your notes. He shares them with me. They are interesting." Holden's face heated. "I didn't realize that was..." "It is not a violation. The books are imperial property. You mark them in pencil. The pencil is also imperial property. Everything you do in this palace is observed. Holden Reeve, you should know that. You may proceed accordingly." He sat back. "All right. You wrote a question on page 46 of the primer." "Did I? Why do the trees glow?" He had written that, he remembered. He had written it next to a diagram of the Velithari forest circadian biology, because the primer had explained how the trees glowed, but not why. The diagram had explained that the trees emitted light through symbiotic bacteria in their bark. The bacteria responded to the chemical signals of the surrounding forests. When one tree pulsed, others pulsed in response. The forest spoke to itself in slow light, but the diagram did not explain why. "I wanted to know what they were saying," he said. Lady Thessalon tilted her head. That is the correct question. She studied him for another long moment. The trees grieve, hold and reeve. They mourn each other when they die. They remember each other when they grow. They sing across distances no Velithari voice can reach. They have been doing this since before my people climbed down from the cliffs and learned to write. She paused. The Empress finds them comforting. She walks the gardens at night. When she cannot sleep, she has walked them for as long as I have served her. He did not answer. You should know something about the Empress before you have your next dinner with her. He went very still. All right. You have heard her say she stopped feeling after Vorinth died. I have. What she did not tell you is that for many years before that, she tried not to be here anymore. There was a cliff above the Imperial Gardens. Her father pulled her back the first 2 times. The 3rd time her father was already gone. She pulled herself back, alone. Lady Thessaline's voice was quiet, steady, the voice of someone delivering news she had delivered before and would deliver again. After that, she chose to keep ruling, but she made a decision. Loving anyone would kill her, so she decided not to. For as long as anyone could remember, I watched her not. He could not breathe for a moment. She told me some of it. He had not meant to say it. He had not meant to share that, but he had. She told you what? That, after her bondmate died, she decided she would continue. She would rule, but she would not feel anything again. When did she tell you this? Our first dinner. Lady Thessaline closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were not wet, but they were tired. The tired of someone who had been carrying something for a very long time. She has not spoken those words aloud in living memory. Holden Reeve, not to me, not to anyone. He did not know what to say. He looked at his hands. I'm sorry, I didn't. Do not apologize. You did not cause her to speak. You simply made her want to. Lady Thessaline stood. That is why I came to see you. I wanted to look at you, to understand what kind of man could make the Empress want to speak. She walked to the door. She paused. You are not what I expected, either. What did you expect? Something more impressive. She glanced back over her shoulder, a faint smile. I am pleased to be wrong. She left him sitting in a small room. He did not move for an hour. 12th dinner. He told her about Emma's mother. He had not planned to. He had brought a maintenance tool with him. He always brought one now. He carried one in his pocket. Habit, comfort, the weight of metal and cloth, something his hand knew how to hold. He was turning it over and over in his palm. She noticed. That is not part of any human dining ritual I have read about. It's not. Sorry. He stilled his hand. What is it? Maintenance multi-tool, standard issue. Why do you carry it? Habit. What is the truth? He looked at her. She did not look away. It was Emma's. Her mother gave it to me when I started working starships, so I'd have something to remember her by. I gave it to Emma when she was 6. She used to carry it around the apartment, pretending she was fixing things. His voice caught. He continued anyway. After I found it under her bed. I've carried it every day since. The Empress did not speak. She reached across the table, slowly, gave him plenty of time to pull his hand away. He did not pull his hand away. She placed her hand over his. Her skin was cool, smooth, the texture of polished stone warmed by sunlight. She did not squeeze his hand. She did not stroke it. She simply rested her palm on his knuckles. It was the first time she had touched him. He could not breathe. Tell me about her mother, she said. So he did. He told her about Sarah, about the way Sarah used to leave her shoes in the middle of the hallway, no matter how many times he asked her not to, about the way she sang badly, about how she had wanted Emma so badly, about the long, quiet hospital room where she had said, "Take care of our girl," and he had said, "I will," and she had closed her eyes. He told her about the 9 years he had raised Emma alone. He told her about Emma's 7th birthday, the one where she had asked for a toolkit instead of a doll, the one where he had cried in the kitchen after she went to bed because he was so proud of her, he didn't know what to do with it. He told her about the morning of the 8th birthday, the morning he had promised her ice cream after school, the morning the seals had failed. He did not cry. He had not cried in a long time. He told her instead, quietly, in the manner of a man reading off the inventory of a wreck. When he finished, she did not speak for a long time. She kept her hand on his. The bioluminescent markings on her temples pulsed slowly, heavily, patterns he did not understand but which seemed somehow to weep. "My second son," she said, "was an engineer." He looked up at her. "He died at 340 in a research accident on Velith Secundus, long before your great-grandparents were born." She paused. "I was unable to attend his funeral. There was a war. I was needed at the front." A breath. "He carried a tool like yours, a small one. His brother had given it to him when he was a child. He carried it for nearly his entire life." She looked down at their hands. "They sent it to me after, in a small box. I keep it in my private chambers. I have not opened the box in a very long time." Holden did not speak. He turned his hand over beneath hers, slowly, so she could pull away if she wanted. She did not. He laced his fingers through hers. She drew in a breath that was not quite a sob. "I think," she said, "tomorrow I will open the box." "You don't have to. I know. That is why I will." The moons climbed higher. The crystal forest pulsed in slow, heavy patterns. A man and a woman who had each been alone for a long time sat at a small table on a garden terrace. Their hands stayed where they were. For a long while, neither of them spoke. They did not need to. He did not see her for 6 days after that. Imperial business, a delegation from the outer systems, trade negotiations that could not be postponed. He understood. He read. He walked the gardens. He sat in his small chair on his small terrace and watched the trees pulse. He thought about her hand on his. He thought about the small box she had not opened in a very long time. He thought about the fact that he had told her about Sarah. He had not spoken Sarah's name out loud in years. He had not been able to. He had said her name to the Empress of an empire that had, until very recently, been at war with his species, and it had felt easier than saying it to anyone else he had ever known. He did not know what that meant. He suspected he knew exactly what it meant. He was afraid of what it meant. He read the children's primer a 3rd time. He read the poetry. He read the treatise on the oath of recompense. He read until his eyes ached, and on the 7th evening, Captain Malus knocked on his door. Captain Malus was the commander of the Empress's personal palace guards. She was perhaps 150 years old, tall, lean, her skin a deep ash purple, her hair a dark brown cut close to her skull, her eyes a pale amber that did not blink as often as Holden was used to. She wore the dark gray uniform of the Imperial Guard. She did not smile. "Cultural liaison. I require a moment of your time." "Of course." She stepped inside, closed the door, did not sit. "There has been a development. I am required by protocol to inform you." "All right. The Dilathari Silent Order has accepted a contract on your life." He did not move. "How much?" She did not answer that. "It is not the amount that concerns me. It is the source." Who hired them? We do not yet know. Funds were routed through 17 accounts in the Outer Rim, through 3 shell companies in the trade unions, through 1 private holding in the noble houses. Whose noble house? She paused. I am not yet at liberty to say. Captain, it is not yet confirmed. He looked at her. She looked back. He understood. Kassar. She did not respond. She did not need to. I am here to inform you that the Empress has authorized additional security. There will be 2 guards at your door at all times, a guard at the window, a guard on the terrace. Your meals will be tasted. Your linens will be searched. You will not leave the palace without an escort of 4. Has the Empress been told? She has. And? Myalis hesitated. She was very still for a long time. Then she said, do not let anything happen to him. And she returned to her work. That's all she said. That is all I am at liberty to share. Holden sat down on the edge of his bed. He put his hand in his pocket, felt the weight of Emma's tool. Captain, yes. How long has she known? 3 days, he nodded slowly. 3 days ago was the day she did not come to dinner. Cultural liaison. I am not at liberty. 3 days ago was the day she did not come to dinner. Yes or no? Myalis was quiet. Yes. Thank you. She turned to go. At the door she paused. Cultural liaison. Yes. I have served the Empress for 40 years. I have seen many men try to harm her. A breath. I have not seen many men try to protect her. She did not look at him. I will do my duty. I will keep you alive. But you should know that if anything happens to her, because of you, I will not be the only Velithari who comes for you. Ah, I understand. Do you? I do. She opened the door. Sleep well. Cultural liaison. She left. He did not sleep well. He sat on the edge of his bed for a long time, with his hand in his pocket, holding Emma's tool. He thought about how strange it was that the woman who had just threatened him was the same woman the Empress trusted with her life, that the warning had been a mark of how much they all cared about her, that somehow, in a handful of weeks, he had become a man Captain Myalis would die to protect, because the Empress wanted him alive. He looked at the wall. He looked at the window. He looked at the door. He waited for what he knew was coming. The assassin came on the 3rd night. The window was the obvious entry point. Holden had known that. The Empress's security teams had known that. They had installed sensors. They had stationed a guard on the ledge below. They had reinforced the frame. The assassin came through the wall. Holden was sitting by the window. He could not sleep. He had not slept well in 3 nights. He was holding Emma's multi-tool in his right hand, turning it over and over. He had been thinking about the Empress, about the way her bioluminescent markings had pulsed when she said the word hope. He was tired. He was holding Emma's tool, and then the wall behind him made a sound, a small wet sound, like a knife sliding through fruit. He turned. A panel of the wall, a section he had assumed was decorative, slid sideways. A figure stepped through, tall, slim, wrapped head to toe in dark fabric that absorbed the light, face covered, hands gloved, holding something thin and silver and very sharp. The figure moved fast. Holden moved faster. He did not think. He had spent 20 years working in spaces where a moment's hesitation meant death. He had spent 6 years not caring whether he lived or died. But somewhere in the last few weeks, something had changed. He did not want to die. He wanted to have dinner tomorrow. He threw the multi-tool. It caught the assassin in the throat, not killing, stunning. The figure staggered. Holden was already moving, closing the distance, tackling the assassin into the wall, the thin silver blade scraping across his ribs in a line of fire. They went down together. He did not remember most of the fight. He remembered the weight of the body beneath him. He remembered the way the assassin's mask came off in the struggle, and he saw for one strange, dizzy moment a face, female, young. He remembered the way her eyes locked on his, and he saw something there that was not hate, was not anger, was something more like resignation, the face of someone doing a job she did not want to do. He remembered raising his hand. He remembered the weight of the broken multi-tool. Half of it had snapped on the assassin's throat, coming down. He remembered the sound it made. He would always remember the sound it made. When the palace guards arrived, 90 seconds later, summoned by some sensor he had triggered without knowing, they found Holden sitting on the floor, his hands shaking, violet blood on his palms, his chest heaving, the assassin still beside him, not moving. He had killed her. He had killed a person, the first person he had ever killed. He sat on the floor. He did not look at the guards. He looked at his hands. He did not recognize them anymore. The Empress arrived 3 minutes later. She did not stop to be announced. She did not pause at the doorway. She did not wait for the guards to clear the room. She came in. She dismissed the guards with a single look. She knelt beside him. She did not flinch at the body. She did not flinch at the blood. She did not flinch at the broken multi-tool, half buried in flesh, that was beginning to cool. She knelt beside Holden Reeve, and she took his hands in hers. He flinched. My hands. I see. There's blood. I know. She did not let go. She held his shaking hands in hers, violet blood smearing her indigo skin, the blood of an assassin she did not know on the hands of a man she barely knew. She did not flinch. He looked at her. Her bioluminescent markings were pulsing rapidly now, frantically, patterns he could not read but which he felt somehow were words. She was speaking to him in a language he could not hear. Holden, yes. Look at me. He looked at her. You are alive. Yes. That is what matters. I killed her. Yes. She was a person. Yes. I've never... His voice broke. His whole face broke. He had not cried in 6 years. He had not cried at Emma's funeral. He had not cried at Sarah's funeral. He had not cried when they pulled Emma's small body out of the wreckage, and he had to sign the papers identifying her by the birthmark on her shoulder. He cried now, quietly, a man who did not know how to cry anymore, relearning how. The Empress did not let go of his hands. She did not say anything. She knelt beside him on the bloody floor of a small room in the outer ring of an imperial palace on a planet his species had not known existed until 50 years ago. She held his hands. She let him cry. She had not held anyone's hand in a long time. She did not let go. When his breathing slowed, she spoke, very softly. The last time I held my son's hand, it was cold. He looked up at her. I held his hand after they brought his body home. 3 weeks after the accident, the medics had done what they could. He looked almost like himself. A breath. His hand was cold. She did not look away from him. I have not held a hand since. Vey, you said the last time you held Emma's hand, it was cold. Yes, mine is warm. Holden, hold it. So he did. He held her hand. She held his. The blood dried on their skin. The crystal forest pulsed below them in slow, patient patterns, the patterns of mourners, the patterns of survivors, the patterns of two beings who had each lost too much and were each somehow still here. He did not let go of her hand. She did not let go of his. For a very long time, Captain Malus returned to the room 2 hours later. She found them sitting on the floor, the Empress's robes ruined, her sleeves stained dark with the assassin's blood, her hair coming loose from its braid, her ceremonial markings still pulsing in slow, heavy patterns. Holden Reeves sitting beside her, his hand in hers, his face washed clean of tears, but his eyes red. Malus did not say anything for a long moment. Then she said, "Your radiance, the body has been identified." "Yes." "And the contract has been traced." "Yes." It was Lord Cassar. The Empress did not move. She did not speak. Holden felt her hand tighten on his, not in surprise, in confirmation. "And," the Empress said, "he did not act alone. There is a faction, small but organized, approximately 40 noble houses. They have been meeting in secret for the past 2 years. They oppose what they call the contamination of imperial blood. They have been waiting for an excuse." The Empress closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were no longer wet. They were something else, something Holden had not seen in her before. He did not know what to call it. He thought it might be the face of an empress. "Mailis, your radiance. If I execute Lord Cassar tonight, what happens?" Mailis did not answer immediately. It would be a justified execution under imperial law. The evidence is overwhelming. "That is not what I asked. If you execute him without a council ruling, 40 noble houses will rise within the week. Some of them control significant fleets. Civil war within the month. Tens of thousands of casualties within the first year, possibly hundreds of thousands. And if I execute him after a council ruling, the council will not rule against one of their own without absolute proof of conspiracy with foreign powers. We have proof of conspiracy with him, not with foreign powers. They will reduce the charge to personal indiscretion, banishment, house dishonor, forfeit of titles, not death. That is not enough. No, your radiance." The Empress was silent. Holden watched her face. He saw the moment when something old and dangerous and very tired began to wake up inside her. He had seen something like it before. He had seen it in himself. 6 years ago, the morning after Emma's funeral, he had stood in his kitchen with a maintenance wrench in his hand and thought very seriously about driving to the headquarters of the company that had built the failed seals and killing every person in the building. He had not done it. He had not done it because Emma would have hated him for it. He looked at the Empress now. He recognized the look on her face. "Vey." She did not look at him. "I will burn this empire for you, Holden." The words were quiet, calm. She meant them. "Don't. They tried to take you from me. I know. They will try again. I know. I am the High Empress of the Sovereign Dominion. I have legions. I have ships. I have 1,000 years of accumulated power. I will not lose another person I love to the cowardice of small men." She turned her face toward him then. The bioluminescent markings on her temples pulsed once, hard. "I will not." He held her hand. He kept his voice level, steady. The voice of a man who had spent 20 years talking nervous engineers off the edge of catastrophic decisions. "Vey, listen to me." "I am listening." "You will not burn this empire." "Why?" "Because tens of thousands of people will die. People who have nothing to do with Lord Cassar. Children, old men, engineers like me, maintenance technicians on civilian transports." "Holden, there are 8-year-olds in this empire." She went very still. "There are 8-year-olds in houses right now, eating dinner, doing homework, asking their parents questions about why the trees glow. Those children did not hire an assassin. Those children did nothing. His voice did not shake. If you go to war over me, those children burn. She closed her eyes. And I am not worth that, Vey. Look at me. I am not worth that. You are worth more than you know, maybe, but I am not worth 10,000 children. She opened her eyes. She did not speak. She did not let go of his hand. He pressed on. There is another way. Tell me. I don't know what it is yet. He looked at her. He held her hand very tight. But I know it exists, because you are not the woman who would burn a planet to keep me safe. You are the woman who walked into a throne room and invoked an oath that no one had used in 2,000 years, because a maintenance technician saved some children. You are the woman who held my hands tonight when they were covered in someone else's blood. You are not the kind of person who burns the world. You never were. She looked at him for a long time. Her bioluminescent markings slowed, settled into a rhythm that was almost calm. Almost. I will not burn this empire, she said, slowly, as if testing the words. Not because of him, because of me. Yes, because of us. Yes. All right, Holden. A breath. All right. She squeezed his hand once, hard, and then she stood. She did not let go. She helped him up. They stood together in the small, bloody room, the assassin's body still beside them, Captain Malus still in the doorway, watching. The Empress turned to Malus. Convene the council. Tomorrow morning, Lord Cassar will be present. So will the cultural liaison. Your Radiance. The cultural liaison has no standing in he will be present. Malus, as my personal guest, under my personal protection. Malus bowed. Yes, your Radiance. She left. The Empress turned to Holden. You should rest. I don't think I can. Stay with me, if you cannot. He looked at her. She looked back. Not like that. Just. Stay in the room while I sit. I have not had anyone else in my chambers since Vorenth. I would like to not be alone tonight. He nodded. Okay. She did not let go of his hand. They walked out of the small, bloody room, down the long, quiet corridors, toward the imperial chambers of the High Empress Valanthra, where she had not let another living soul cross the threshold since Vorenth had died. The crystal forest below them pulsed in even rhythms. Somewhere in the palace, Lord Cassar sat at his desk, read the report of his assassin's failure, closed his eyes, and understood that he had lost. He did not know yet what kind of losing it was. He would find out tomorrow. Part 3. The imperial chambers were not what he expected. He had expected gold, tapestries, the accumulated weight of centuries of imperial taste. Instead, he found a small sitting room, a worn reading chair, a blanket folded over the back of it, a low table with a half-finished book on it, a pair of slippers by the bed in the next room. It looked like the apartment of someone who had been living alone for a very long time. She sat in the reading chair. He sat on the floor near her feet. He did not know why he sat on the floor. He just sat there. She rested her hand on the top of his head. He let her. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The bioluminescent markings on her temples pulsed in steady rhythms now, tired. The patterns of someone who had been holding her breath for a long time and was finally allowed to exhale. He thought about Emma. He thought about Sarah. He thought about all the long nights he had sat alone in his apartment after Emma died, watching the clock, not eating, not sleeping, not feeling anything except the slow grinding of his own bones against each other. He thought about how he was sitting on the floor in the chambers of an empress, how her hand was on his head, how he was not alone tonight. For the first time in 6 years, his chest hurt. It was the hurt of healing. He had forgotten what that felt like. She fell asleep in the chair. He did not move. He sat at her feet until the moon set. He sat at her feet until the first light of the twin suns began to bleed through the crystalline walls. He sat at her feet until she stirred and woke and looked down at him, and her face for one strange, unguarded second looked young, not human young, Velithari young, the face of a girl of 40 or 50, before the wars, before the losses, before everything. She blinked. Her face composed itself. She was the High Empress again. You stayed. I did. All night. All night. You did not sleep. No. She did not say you should have. She did not say I am sorry. She did not say any of the things a stranger would have said. She said, "Thank you, Holden." He nodded. He stood, his knees stiff, his back protesting. He looked at her. She looked at him. "We have a council to attend," she said. "We do. I will see you there." "You will." He left her chambers. He walked back to his small room in the outer ring of the palace. He washed the dried blood from his hands. He dressed in clean clothes that had appeared overnight in his closet. He looked at himself in the mirror. He did not recognize the man looking back. He had not recognized himself in a long time. But this time, the unrecognizable man in the mirror was not a stranger. This time, the unrecognizable man in the mirror was someone he might be able to know. He went to the council. The imperial council chamber was 3 times the size of the throne room, tiered seating in concentric rings, 40 seats on the lower ring, 60 on the middle ring, 120 on the upper ring, 220 noble representatives, every one of them watching as Holden Reeve walked through the great doors. He wore simple gray, the same simple gray they had given him for the first dinner. He had refused the formal attire the palace tailors had offered. He had refused the ceremonial markings. He had refused the imperial sash. He wore what he wore. He carried what was left of Emma's multi-tool in his pocket. He walked through the great doors. He walked across the long marble floor. He took the position the Empress had specified, 3 paces to the left of her throne, 1 pace forward, within striking distance, within speaking distance. He stood at her left hand. Lord Cassar was already in the chamber. He was not chained. He had not been arrested. He sat in his customary seat at the council table, his silver robes immaculate, his hair braided, his face composed. He did not look at Holden. He looked at the Empress. The Empress rose from her throne. The chamber went still. "We are convened," she said, "to address a matter of imperial security and a matter of honor." Lord Cassar's jaw tightened. The Empress did not look at him. 3 nights ago, an assassin entered the quarters of Holden Reeve, cultural liaison to this court. Holden Reeve defended himself. "The assassin is dead." The chamber murmured. "I have investigated, with the assistance of Captain Malis, with the assistance of the Imperial Archives, with the assistance of resources I do not customarily disclose." She paused. "I have proof, beyond reasonable doubt, that the contract was placed by Lord Cassar of House Cassar, first voice of this council." The chamber erupted. She did not raise her voice. She raised her hand. The chamber silenced. "I have, in short, more than enough proof to execute him where he stands." Lord Cassar did not move. His face did not change, but Holden could see his hands tighten on the arms of his chair. The Empress descended the steps of her throne. She walked slowly to the center of the chamber. She turned in place. She looked at every lord in every ring. She looked at her first voice. And I am not going to do that. The chamber held its breath. She let the silence sit. She let them all wonder. Holden watched her. She had not told him what she was going to do. He did not know. He did not know what was coming. He thought he knew her. He hoped he knew her. He had not slept in 2 nights. He was running on tea that tasted like nothing and the weight of a broken multi-tool in his pocket. He was standing in front of 220 noble representatives of an empire that had until recently been at war with his species, and he was watching the woman he loved. There it was. He had thought it. He could not unthink it. He loved her. There it was, make a decision that was about to change everything. He held his hands very still. He waited. Lord Cassar, your radiance. Stand. He stood. Approach. He approached. He stopped 3 paces from her, his silver robes catching the light from the high windows, his hair still in its careful braid, his face for the first time beginning to crack. She studied him for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was almost gentle. You loved me once. Lord Cassar did not answer. A long time ago, after Vorinth had been dead for 40 years, you came to my chambers. You did not bring flowers. You did not bring poetry. You brought a small wooden box with a piece of bread in it from your house's kitchens. His mouth opened, closed. You said, I do not know how to court an empress, but I know how to feed her. Please, let me try. The chamber was utterly still. Holden watched Lord Cassar's face crumble, slowly, like a wall coming down brick by brick. The Empress did not look away. I refused you, Cassar. I refused you with the kindest words I could find. I told you I could not love again. I told you I could not bear another loss. I told you I was sorry. I told you it was not about you. She paused. You bowed. You left. You served me for a very long time. You never spoke of it. You never let anyone see what I had done to you. A breath. I knew every day for all those years. I knew. Lord Cassar's eyes were wet. He did not blink. And then, 3 months ago, a human walked into my throne room, and I laughed, and you saw. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. You saw that I could love again, just not you. The chamber did not breathe. Lord Cassar's hands began to shake. And so you hired an assassin to kill the man who had done what you could not do. Not because he is dangerous, not because he threatens the empire, because he made me laugh. And you watched, and it broke you. A breath. Is that not so, Cassar? Lord Cassar's voice was very quiet when it came. Yes, your radiance. The chamber gasped. He had not denied it. He had not tried to escape. He had not asked for mercy. He had simply said yes. The Empress closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were not angry. They were tired. Sit, Cassar. He sat. She turned to face the rest of the chamber. By the laws of the sovereign dominion, by the codes that have bound this council for 1,500 years, Lord Cassar of House Cassar, you stand convicted of treason against the imperial person. A murmur. The standard sentence is death. The murmur stopped. I will not impose it. The chamber stared at her. This was the moment Holden had been waiting for. He stepped forward, half a step, enough that the Empress saw him, enough that the Lord saw him. She nodded once. Permission. He spoke. His voice carried farther than he expected. It was the voice of a maintenance technician who had spent 20 years explaining hard truths to nervous engineers. It was the voice of a father who had spent 6 years not speaking to anyone about anything that mattered. It was the voice of a man who had nothing left to lose. And then, suddenly, did. My name is Holden Reeve. He did not look at Lord Cassar. He looked at the Lords. I am 43 years old. I am a maintenance technician. I have been working starships for 20 years. I am not a noble. I am not a diplomat. I do not know your laws. I do not know your customs. I am a guest in your chamber, and I am very tired. He paused. I want to tell you a story, if you will let me. He waited. The Lords did not interrupt. He continued. 14 years ago, I lost my wife. Her name was Sarah. She died bringing our daughter into the world. The doctors did everything they could. There was a hemorrhage. They could not stop it. She held my hand. She said, "Take care of our girl." And she closed her eyes, and she did not open them again. His voice was steady. He had said her name out loud now, several times in 3 weeks. After 6 years of silence, it was getting easier. After Sarah died, I had a daughter. Her name was Emma. I raised her alone for 9 years. She was the funniest person I have ever known. She used to ask why airplanes fly, why dogs bark, why old men wear hats, why the sky is blue and the ocean is blue, but not the same blue. She asked me 1,000 questions a day, and I tried very hard to answer all of them. He swallowed. 6 years ago, I lost Emma. Hull breach on a colony transport. The emergency seals failed. I was working on the engines. By the time I got to her section, the bulkheads had closed. By the time I cut through, she was gone. His voice did not shake. He kept it steady. I will tell you the truth, Lords of the Sovereign Dominion. When I came home from her funeral, I sat in my kitchen with a wrench in my hand, the same wrench I am carrying right now in my pocket, and I thought very seriously about driving to the company that built the failed seals and killing every person in the building. The chamber held its breath. I did not do it. He paused. I did not do it because Emma would have hated me for it. She was 8 years old. She was the kindest person I knew. She used to feed stray cats behind our apartment. She used to cry when bugs got stuck in spider webs. She would have hated me if I had become someone who killed people, even people who deserved it. He turned to look at the Empress. That is what I want to say. To you, your radiance. He held her eyes. Lord Cassar did a terrible thing. He hired someone to kill me. He almost succeeded. If your security teams had not been faster, I would be dead, and you would be alone again for a long time, a breath. I want him to face consequences. I want him very much to face them. He turned then to Lord Cassar. He looked at the man who had tried to have him killed. He did not see a villain. He saw an old man with wet eyes and a broken face, sitting in robes that suddenly looked too big for him. He saw a man who had loved someone for a long time and never been loved back. He saw a man who had watched his only love laugh at someone else. He saw a man who had made one terrible decision because his heart had been broken for too long. But I do not want him to die. The chamber gasped. I do not want you, your radiance, to execute him. She did not speak. She watched him, listening, because if you do, you will not be executing a man who tried to kill me. You will be executing a lifetime of devoted service to you. You will be executing the man who brought you bread when no one else dared to bring you anything. You will be executing the man who stood beside your throne every day through wars, through famines, through the long, quiet years when no one else could bear to see your grief. He paused. You will be burning down a part of your own life, to punish him for being broken. His voice softened. And you will, your radiance, become a person who burns down parts of her own life to punish broken people. And I do not think that is the woman you want to be. I do not think that is the woman Vorinth fell in love with. And I know, with absolute certainty, that it is not the woman who walked into my room 3 nights ago and held my bloody hands and cried for an assassin she did not know. He stopped. He had not meant to say all of it. He had said it. The chamber did not move. Lord Cassar was staring at him, his mouth open, his face wet. I would ask you instead, your radiance, to remember what mercy is. Mercy is not weakness. Mercy is the choice that the strong make when they no longer need to prove anything. You do not need to prove anything to anyone in this room. You have ruled this empire longer than any of them have been alive. You have earned the right to be the kind of empress you want to be. He took a breath. Be that one. He stepped back. He returned to his place at her left hand. He did not look at her. He looked at the floor. His hands were shaking. He put them in his pockets. He felt the broken multi-tool. He held it. The Empress did not speak for a long time. The chamber did not breathe. Lord Cassar wept, quietly, in his seat, his silver robe shaking, a lifetime of carefully controlled grief breaking loose all at once. The Empress watched him weep. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but not cold, not anymore. Lord Cassar, he looked up. Stand, approach me. He stood, he approached her. He stopped 3 paces from her. She studied his face. You have served me for as long as I can remember. Yes, your radiance. You have given me your loyalty, your judgment, your hands, your years. Yes, your radiance. And 3 nights ago, you tried to take from me the first thing in a very long time that I have wanted. Yes, your radiance. Why? Lord Cassar opened his mouth. He closed it. He spoke, his voice nearly inaudible. Because I could not bear to see you happy, when I had spent a lifetime grieving you in silence. I broke, your radiance. I broke. She nodded slowly. I know. She looked at him for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was not the voice of an empress. It was the voice of a woman who had loved one man and lost him, and who knew exactly what it felt like to lose someone you loved, even when that someone was still alive, even when that someone was standing in front of you and could not see you. Cassar, I am sorry. The chamber went absolutely silent. I am sorry I could not love you back. I am sorry I told you I could not love anyone again. I am sorry I let you believe that, because it turned out not to be true. I am sorry I made you watch me be wrong. A breath. That does not excuse what you did, but it explains it, and I have, for a very long time, owed you an apology. I should have given it to you the day you brought me the bread, instead of waiting until you tried to kill the man I love. The chamber gasped. She had said it. In front of 220 noble representatives, she had said the man I love. Holden could not breathe. He had known. He had thought he had known. But now she had said it, in front of everyone, in words that could not be unsaid. He looked at his shoes. He thought he might cry. He had cried enough this week. He did not cry. The Empress continued, Lord Cassar, I am stripping you of your titles, your seat on this council, your responsibilities in the imperial court. House Cassar will be administered by your eldest daughter from this day forward. She is a fine woman. She will manage your estates better than you have these last few years. A pause. I am not executing you. I am not banishing you to a prison world. I am giving you what I should have given you a long time ago. Time to live away from the court that has worn you down, away from the Empress who could not love you back, away from the duty that has cost you everything you once were. She drew a breath. You will retire to the outer reaches, to your family's ancestral estate, the one your grandmother built on the cliffs, with the library she filled and the garden she planted. You will have your books, you will have your garden, you will have time, you will be alone in a way that is not the loneliness of a council chamber. You will be alone in a way that, eventually, allows a person to become themselves again. She paused. And if, one day, you find what I could not give you, with someone who can give it back, I will be glad, Kassar. I will be very glad. He stared at her. He did not speak. He could not. She continued, softer. You are not banished from my friendship, only from my court. If you write to me, I will write back. If I pass through the outer reaches, I will visit. If you find peace, I want to know. I have known you for most of my adult life. I am not going to pretend I did not. Lord Kassar's face broke completely. He dropped to his knees in front of her. He pressed his forehead to the floor. He wept. She did not move. She let him weep. When he was finished, she said, very quietly, stand, Kassar. I do not require you to bow to me any more. He stood, slowly. She turned to the chamber. Mercy is not weakness, her voice carried. It is the choice that the strong make, when they no longer need to prove anything. A breath. I have ruled this empire long enough. I have nothing left to prove to any of you. She looked at every ring of the chamber, every face. I learned this today from a human who has lost more than most of you in this room have ever loved. He stood here and asked me to spare a man who tried to kill him, because he understood better than I did what kind of empress I want to be. She turned to Holden. She looked at him for a long moment. Her bioluminescent markings pulsed once, twice, steady. Cultural liaison, your radiance. Will you walk with me in the gardens this evening? Holden's voice was very quiet. Yes, your radiance. She nodded once. She turned back to the chamber. We are adjourned. The garden terrace was quiet. The crystal forest pulsed below them in even rhythms. The twin moons hung low on the horizon, full and silver, closer than they had been in months. The locals called it the season of the joined moons. It came once every 9 standard years. It was the closest the moons would be for another 9. He had read about it in the children's primer. He had not known the moons would be joined tonight. She had. She had been planning this for weeks. He sat in his chair. She sat in hers. They had pushed the chairs together so their shoulders touched. She had taken off her ceremonial robes. She wore something simpler, a soft dark tunic, trousers, no marks of office, no imperial sash, no braid. Her hair was down. It fell to her waist in a black wave that caught the moonlight in strands of silver. She looked at him. He looked at her. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The crystal forest sang to itself in soft light. Somewhere out there, the trees were grieving, or remembering, or simply telling each other that they were still here. Still here, still here, still here. It was a good thing to say. He thought he would say it to her tonight in English. He thought she would understand. Among my people, she said softly, the sharing of meals between two beings, repeated, in private, without ceremony, is how courtship begins. He smiled. I know. You, what? I knew by the 3rd dinner. She stared at him. He kept smiling. I've been reading, remember. The treatise on the oath of recompense had a footnote. about what humans call dinner and what your people call the first thread. I read it the first morning after I got back to my room. You did not. I did. You knew. I knew for weeks. For weeks. She closed her eyes. She covered her face with her hand, and then she laughed. She laughed harder than he had ever heard her laugh. A sound that was not the polite, startled sound of the first dinner, not the controlled sound of the engine bay, not any of the small, careful sounds she had been giving him over the last several weeks. She laughed like a young woman with her whole life ahead of her, like a young woman with a young woman's hope. When she finished, she was wiping her eyes. You are, Holden Reeve, the most impossible man I have ever known, probably. You walked into my throne room, covered in blood, and refused to kneel, and then asked me to dinner, knowing what dinner meant. No, I didn't know that. You, what? I didn't know what dinner meant. The first time, I just wanted to sit with you, because you looked alone the way I looked alone. He paused. I learned what it meant after, and I kept coming back, because by then I knew what it meant, and what I wanted was exactly that. She looked at him. He looked back. The twin moons climbed higher. He reached across the small space between their chairs. He took her hand. He laced his fingers through hers. Yes, I am going to die long before you. I know. Maybe 60 years, if I'm lucky, maybe less. I know. Does that bother you? She did not answer for a long time. When she did, her voice was steady. For a very long time, I have lived inside the fear of that loss. I have refused every form of joy, every form of connection, every form of love, because I was afraid of losing it. I have spent more years than I can name protecting myself from a pain I had not yet felt, a breath. I would rather have 60 years of feeling alive than 600 more of merely existing. She turned to look at him. The bioluminescent markings on her temples pulsed in patterns he was beginning to understand. He could not name the patterns yet, but he understood them. They said, I am still here, I am still here, I am still here. And you, Holden, will not get a single one of those years alone. She lifted his hand. She pressed her lips to his knuckles, the same knuckles she had held 3 nights ago when they had been covered in someone else's blood. She kissed them softly. He drew her hand to his own face. He pressed his lips to her palm. He held her hand against his cheek. She leaned forward. He leaned forward. She pressed her forehead to his. They sat that way for a long while. 2 foreheads, 2 breaths. 1 moment, she did not kiss him, not yet. She would, eventually, she would kiss him many times. In the years to come, she would learn what human kissing was, and he would learn what Velithari touching was, and they would build a small private vocabulary of affection that belonged only to them. Not tonight. Tonight she pressed her forehead to his. She let him feel her breathing. She let him feel her staying. He let her feel him stay. She lifted her face from his. She looked at him, her amethyst eyes catching the silver light of the joined moons. She said, very softly, welcome home, Holden. He could not speak. He nodded. He squeezed her hand, and on a garden terrace overlooking a world that humans had not known existed 50 years ago, a man and a woman who had each survived their own ending began the long, quiet work of becoming whole